Have you ever started to do something and you really want it to turn out well, and then everything seems to go wrong? You feel like you're just chasing this version of things or yourself that you just can't quite get to. Oh, I just can't get things right. Why can't I get this right? You might feel this kind of tension build up in you. It's perfectionism. As we talk, I'm going to show you some video of me cleaning my house, and I haven't been up to doing it again in a month. I would like to be perfect, but I am not. I found out as I was kind of researching this video that 92% of us deal with some level of perfectionism. I was really surprised about that. And then I found out there are different types of perfectionism. And I found out that perfectionism makes things harder when you have chronic illnesses. They have actually studied it, and they have specifically studied how it affects people with fibromyalgia, which I have, in case you're new and don't know that. I found out there are some things we can do about it. And I thought it'd be really good for us to talk about these things. If you find yourself relating to any of this, you might want to think about subscribing, because we talk about these kinds of things here. We declutter, we slow and simplify, we talk about the things we can do to deal with our challenges, and we just want to live happier lives. When we think about perfectionism, we typically think of people who want to have everything so perfect and their house is just so clean, they're so clean, they're wanting their kids to be so clean, or to do projects really well and please everybody else. And when they can't, they just get devastated. Well, that is one kind of perfectionism. Perfectionism is more of a spectrum. So on this side are the people that feel like that, like they just can't get anything right. They're just seeking for everything to go right. And then when they can't, they just feel so bad. They feel bad about themselves. They feel bad about what happens. And there's the other side, the people who are seeking excellence and really working hard. But if things don't go right or they make mistakes, they just are kind of like, okay, well, that's how it is. I'm going to learn from this. And they just go on. And then there just are various levels of it in between. There are a few different types of perfectionism. They're self-oriented. This is when you set incredibly high standards for yourself and you feel pretty crushed when you can't quite meet them. I had a student one time who was just the most lovely girl. She was in my band, and I had it planned out where anyone who wanted an A could get it. They just had to do certain things, and there were no trick tests or anything like that. But if you didn't quite get to like the number of practice hours or something, your grade will be lower. Well, this was a wonderful girl. I thought so much of her. She didn't practice quite enough, so she got an A-, and she was so devastated. And I felt so bad for her because that had happened to me. My brother, who's older than me, was one of these who got straight A's all the way through everything. Through high school, through college, through graduate school, just straight A's. And so there was kind of this feeling in our family and that I had built up that I needed to do that as well. And I had done well in high school, not straight A's, but really well. And when I was in my first quarter, I took my first test it was a science class or something. I don't remember for sure. But I got a B+, and I was just devastated because if you get a B+, that makes it more likely that you will get an A. So I went up to the teacher, and I was just crying. And he's like, Roseanne, a B+ is a good grade. Particularly in this class, it's a good grade. He sent me over to the counseling center. That counselor helped me figure out that I had set these standards based on what my brother did, and that wasn't being fair to me. At that time, I was self-oriented, and we're going to talk about how that happens. I had to learn not to be so crushed by not being perfect. Then they're socially prescribed. You believe others expect you to be perfect, and you fear judgment if you fail. Guess what? I've had some of that too, because there was that sense that I needed to be perfect in some things. And I developed a fear that I'd fail that I still deal with. Then there's other-oriented. This is when you have this feeling that everyone needs to be perfect and do things perfectly and say things perfectly according to your standards. You're the judge. And you can imagine what it's like to have a parent that's that way. Now imagine you have a boss that's that way, and then you're the kind who's really hard on yourself. You're trying really, really hard. And when you don't quite get it right, or they judge it to not be quite right, what a terrible mix that is, right? And then we're in this world today where all these people have decided what is perfect. And if you say the wrong thing according to them, or you do the wrong thing according to them, they'll cancel you. They'll make your life heck. They'll get you fired from your job. They have decided what's perfect, and they judge other people. And the interesting thing about it is then they fail to notice that they are doing those very same things. Then there's adaptive perfectionists, which is the type that are really striving for excellence and they're really working hard, but they just aren't so devastated when things don't go their way. That is where I'm working to get, and I have made progress. So that's the good news. To be a perfectionist isn't a lifelong sentence. If you're over here with this, I want to be perfect, I want to do everything right, and I'm really disappointed and devastated if I can't get it right, that is called maladaptive perfectionism. Here's the sneaky thing about perfectionism. We often don't know we are a perfectionist. What we think instead is that we're organized, we're driven, we're motivated, but we don't realize we're taking it too far. We see it in other people, but we don't see it in ourselves. And then we're afraid if we're not that way, then we'll be lazy. And other people will see us as lazy, which we don't want people to judge us. You see the problem? So you might see yourself as just having really high standards. And you're just always doing your best. You're trying to do your best. When really you might be pushing yourself past the point of healthy striving. Perfectionism often sounds like, I should be doing more, I ought to do better than this, why can't I get it just right, I know I can do better, I know I can do better. That little voice that's inside of us that says, this isn't good enough, I'm not good enough, over and over again. Maybe you have worked on it and you've managed to stamp that voice down. So it's kind of go underground. And instead, it's in your body. When you start to do something that you know you need to do well, you start feeling that fear build up in you. This morning, I did a meditation. I talk about that app all the time. It's Happier Meditation. I chose the one where they were talking about procrastination. And the teacher was having us, or me, at that moment, think of something that we were procrastinating. It was this video. And how do you feel in your body? And I could just feel it. There's a certain sense really washes down me and I get really tense, get kind of shocky, it's hard to explain. He's like, when else have you felt like that? And I just went back to when I was a kid, junior high particularly, even high school, where I had to perform on my violin and I would just feel overwhelmed by that. I'd almost feel a little shaky, hard to breathe, but it was just that flesh of that going down me that was so uncomfortable. And I realized at the time I was in real danger of being criticized and judged because I was picked on all the way through public school. And then I grew up in an environment that was, pretty perfectionistic. And if I made mistakes, they were pointed out. So when I have to do well, or I feel like I have to do well, that will just overwhelm me. But he said, don't try to push it away. It'll actually make it worse. This inside struggle against it. Instead, just feel it and relax into it. I've noticed that when I do that, it starts to dissipate. It makes it easier to do whatever I was procrastinating about. But you see what was mixed up in there. I want to do it well. What if I can't get it out well? What if I'm not sitting in the right place or talking straight? You see, this is what happens. This is what perfectionism looks like day to day. Perfectionism doesn't always look like color-coded files or a pantry or sparkling clean closets. Sometimes it looks like researching ideas or things you want to know endlessly and never feeling like you're ready to start because you haven't come up with the perfect answer yet. Feeling ashamed when you mess up, even just a little. Pushing yourself so hard that you get exhausted. It's hard to pace. Procrastinating because it feels safer. The thing about this kind of procrastination is that it can lead to inertia. And inertia is that rule that when something is moving, it's easier for it to keep moving. But if something has stopped, then it needs some kind of force, something to happen to get it moving again. So if you start procrastinating all the time, then you can stop doing it, and it's really hard to get yourself moving in that way. Struggling to say that something is good enough. Good enough doesn't mean it's perfect. It's good enough. Done is better than perfect. Good enough is part of it just being done. Not allowing yourself to rest, to take a break with a peace of mind, because there's always something you should be doing. There are some reasons that this can happen to us. Not surprisingly, things that happen when we're in our childhood. Like maybe you grew up in a family that had really high standards. Maybe you had an experience like where I was bullied so badly, and so I just fell into, these are the things I can do well, and I'm going to really focus on them, and I don't want to make mistakes with them, and when I do, I'm at risk. So there are a lot of things like that can happen when we're a child that makes us believe that we really need to perform in this super high level. There's also trauma and dysfunction. So maybe you were abused in some way. I think the bullying was very traumatic, and it's taken me a long time to heal from that, a long, long time. If you couldn't control your environment, then you wanted to control something, and doing something really well or becoming perfect in some way was a way of controlling things. Sometimes people who have eating disorders fall into that. They feel out of control, and so they're going to control their eating, become perfect in that way. Then there are personality traits. Introversion, sensitivity, or a strong need for control is part of your personality. I'm a sensitive person. You might have heard people say to you off and on your whole life, like I have, oh, you're just too sensitive. Stop being too sensitive. And of course, that was being said to me by someone who is not sensitive. And then if you're an introvert, which I am, my personality is quite a bit like my father's, and we handle illnesses and stress and everything the same kind of way. But if you have somebody in your life who's an extrovert, doesn't get that, then it can add to it. Then there are genetics. Then there's cultural and societal pressure. Everywhere we hear the message and social media and everywhere, this is the way you need to be, do more, look better, and people just present themselves in the best way, and they don't talk about their problems. And so we see that, and I think it's a real problem for younger people. Then there can be mental health aspects to it, like anxiety, OCD, or depression, and then trust issues. Perfectionists often have trouble asking for help or delegating because maybe they can do it really quickly and they can do it really well, and they're kind of afraid if they hand it off that that person won't do it as well, and so why bother? When I was looking into perfectionism, I had this thought, oh gosh, somebody ought to study perfectionism and chronic illness. And guess what? There has been research done on this topic. Perfectionism and chronic illness are a bad combination because if you want to do really well and you're used to pushing yourself, and then all of a sudden your body just won't cooperate with you, and so you can't do the things that you want to do to the level that you feel like you can do it, and you're constantly running against the wall, That is a very difficult thing to deal with. And then most of us have this internal script that is, push through, try harder. Everyone else can do it. What's wrong with me? We don't want to let people down or appear scattered or wishy-washy or undependable. We know that people judge that. And then we have the problem where we often just look perfectly fine. And so people assume we can do all of these things, and they do get critical of us, or sometimes they just blow us off and kind of gaslight us and tell us that's not a real thing. And so we fear that, and so we kind of go underground. And so if you're a perfectionist or you have any tendency toward perfectionism and want to put on this front, then that is really difficult for you. And I learned over the years to basically not tell many people. When I was at my last job, I went 3 or 4 years before I told anybody that I have fibromyalgia because I saw how people were getting judged, and I didn't want to get judged, and so I did crazy things. Like when I got too tired, I went under my desk and took a rest. My office was in a place in the building I could get away with that, but I didn't want to say I have fibromyalgia. And you're used to serving, and then all of a sudden you're in a situation where you have to ask for help. That can be really hard for you. So perfectionism and chronic illness don't mix well. One of the reasons they studied this, they were trying to help caregivers and medical professionals know how to help people that have chronic illnesses deal with it. They pointed out, don't be critical of them. Help them to understand that it's good for them to pace themselves. This is a good thing. It's not a thing to criticize yourself or punish yourself, because you will do better. You'll feel better. You'll be able to do more if you take time to care for yourself. So hear this. I want you to know, if this is you, you are not broken. You are not lazy. You're doing the best you can. So give yourself a break. Just take care of yourself. It's okay to take care of yourself. Your worth is not measured by productivity. You are worthwhile. You are valuable just simply because you are you. You are a real, worthwhile person who just happens to have a problem that you have to deal with.
Whenever I'm up to find the sunset, a flavor of a memory. Whenever all the stars above are shining, then I know I'll never be alone.
So how do we let go of perfectionism? Let's talk about some of the things that help. Awareness is the first thing. Start noticing all of those shoulds and not enough that roll through your head or roll through your body. Stop and say to yourself, where is that coming from? Is it really true that I should do this? Is it really true that this is not enough? So talk back to it. Be aware. Replace that voice in your head. Practice good enough. Aim for done, not perfect. In fact, purposely try to do things imperfectly. Try crafts or activities around, or learn something that you don't know how to do well enough to do it perfectly. And experience what it is to be imperfect, and go into it with, I'm not going to be able to do this perfectly, but I'm going to have fun doing it. Take action, even if it's small. Remember inertia. We got to do something to get ourselves to move again. So go for small and just start somewhere. Work to build that momentum. Rest on purpose. This is not optional. You need to take care of yourself. That is as important, or maybe more important, than anything or activity you can do, because if you don't, you can't do them. Give yourself permission to be messy, to be tired, to do things halfway, to not be okay, to still be worthy. This is what I have had to do and learn in the last 2 years since I came down with the long COVID, and when I fell down and hurt my head and all of that stuff. I have had to really give myself permission. I'm hesitant to say I'm working on it because that's my inclination, to work on it, get it there. I have to be messy about even my ability to overcome perfectionism quick enough. Here's the irony. If you're someone who wants to do things well, and you know you have to learn to pace, then you might do what I've done. Be deciding that you're going to be able to pace perfectly all the time. You're going to be able to tell when you need to stop and rest so that you won't ever mess up and do too much. No. So overcoming perfectionism does not happen overnight. It's a process of unlearning and learning. It's not about giving up your standards. It's about finding peace. If you'd like to talk to people in a safe way that have some of these feelings, you might want to check out my Patreon because that's the main reason I started it. Here is a video that YouTube feels that you'll really enjoy. I hope I see you again. Bye.